Aaron, Joanne and Aaron, David are going to do a short presentation on the cleanup campaign and how they're going to approach it throughout the community, what their recommendation is. And there again, we'd like your feedback and make sure that we're heading in the right direction this evening. So with that, one of the things that basically, and in your packet that we prepared for you, and it'll be in your council packet next meeting, Susan put together sort of a summary of the proposed code amendments that we've done. This is the legalese version. I'm going to give you the version that we can understand, if that makes sense. So we discovered that there were a lot of conflicts and other redundant provisions between the town code and the UDO, and they advised that the property maintenance provisions do not belong in the zoning ordinance. So that's where we're taking them out of the UDO and bringing them to the town code. The ordinance amending the town code is intended really to clarify, reorganize, and update property maintenance, public nuisance, and abatement provisions to current state law. So while we were doing this, they looked at the current state law and brought it up to what the current state law is. The biggest part of that is they basically came up with a new Title 8. And that Title 8 broke out to 4 different chapters. Chapter 81, Health and Safety. Chapter 82, Declaration and Prohibition of Public Nuisances. 83, Property Maintenance. And 84, Abatement of Property Nuisances. So they just reorganized the town code and how we adopt or how we do the code abatement process. Added just a few definitions: abandoned vehicle, health hazard, and sidewalk. And that was important. And one of the few things that we'd like you guys to talk about is we reduced the height of growth from 18 inches to 12 inches, and we did it through wherever it showed up because we thought, if it's 12 inches, it needs to be mowed, not 18. So we brought that down. We added residential properties greater than 2 acres and properties greater than 2 acres, and a property greater than 2 acres as adjacent to any property must maintain a defensible space of 25 feet along the adjacent property line. So any residential property that abuts another property, a 2-acre plus residential property, must maintain a 25-foot defensible space, or basically mow 25 feet around. We added commercial property with street frontage 25 feet from the property line. So anybody up and down 89, they need to mow back 25 feet for that defensible space, and along all adjoining property lines. So they don't have to mow the entire thing, they just have to have that 25 swath of defensible space. So any comments on that?
I do. What about like my pasture where I put my animals? Is there a allowance in there for that? Because I usually don't turn my cows on until it's 2 feet tall or so.
Yeah, as long as it's maintained below that 12 inches, so you would have to maintain around any property adjoining, right? Am I correct there, Joanne? Yeah.
So I would have to mow the edges, but I could leave the mass grow.
Alone, right.
Okay,
Right.
Thank you.
Just the perimeter, right.
And this is only residential property,
Residential and then commercial property
okay?
within 25
Not
feet.
agricultural.
Not agriculture. So just pretty much, yeah, if you're budding residential or commercial budding residential, any of those. The next thing is we redefined a habitual offender as someone who commits 2 or more civil violations from 3 in an 18-month period. That'll get them through the process quicker. So the people can't, with 3, sometimes we couldn't define them as a habitual offender and we couldn't take them through. It gets them into the civil and the criminal process, correct? Sooner. So basically, if you have a bad apple, you have a bad apple, and they move forward.
Sorry, Joe, want to tell me where you were?
I can go.
Okay.
I can go there. Oh, maybe I can't.
Ooh, I like that one.
That's a nice one. That's a preview. Okay, and then duty to maintain premises. This is just to redefine the language that all persons owning any building, lot, or premises within the town shall maintain and repair all sidewalks, driveway culverts, streets adjacent to said buildings, lot, or premises in a safe and sound condition, free of decay and defect. And the reason they did that is, 1, if you have a sidewalk in front of your property, you need to maintain it. But 2, we've had a lot of property owners that they'll just go to their property line and won't maintain their culvert or the ditch up to the street. So this gives us the authority to say, no, you need to go all the way to the street and mow and keep everything clean, not just to your fence or to your property line. So that was the intent of that.
Can we go back to previous violations? It says 2 or more civil violations from 3 in an 18-month period. That's confusing to me.
It was 3. Now it's 2.
Oh, you might say reduced from 3.
Yes.
That doesn't,
Yeah. Originally, it was 3 in an 18-month period, and we found people just we couldn't get them in enough
if you put
violations.
reduced in there, I think it'd be a little clearer or something
Okay.
like that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that'll just, the 83.02, that little change will just allow us to require the property owner to maintain up to, into the right of way, up to the road or whatever, the street adjacent to them. And then parking of commercial vehicles. So I highlighted the significant part, but I'll read it to you. So no person shall park or allow to be parked any commercial vehicle or heavy equipment having a gross vehicle weight exceeding 13,000 pounds or any vehicle property on any private property in the town except when necessary to conduct an authorized commercial purpose. So if they're on the property to drill a well or do something like that, that's fine. On the property, or only when authorized by basically a conditional use permits being issued. So anybody parking on private property, any commercial vehicles, would have to come through and do the conditional use process so that we'd know that they're there. On any, yeah. It's on residential, correct? Residential property, yes.
Do you have a question on?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do.
Okay,
I have an old John Deere backhoe that is privately owned, parked on my property that weighs approximately 14,000 pounds.
okay,
I've got an old fire truck that I bought and converted to a water truck for dust control that weighs over 13,000 pounds. I have to get a conditional use permit to have those?
I'm gonna ask Joanne to help me out here. In the residential areas, yes.
I got a problem with that.
Okay, so talk to us about
No,
that.
I mean, there's many people that may have private pieces of equipment that they use. I mean, I don't live in Bright Star or Appaloosa Meadows. I think that's where there has to be a little bit of leeway,
Right.
a little bit of common sense. If, I live on a piece of property that's 5 acres and could be agricultural.
Okay,
So I think there just has to be,
and it's a residential piece.
but that's where my home is.
Yeah.
So, just a thought.
So, yeah, and that's what we're asking for is, I mean, how do you guys feel? This is,
Corey, what's your dump truck, Corey, empty?
Doesn't matter what the way empty, the GVW of that truck is
Oh, that's right.
what it's rated at. Not so much what it weighs, but
So
GVW.
GVW wouldn't apply to a backhoe because a backhoe is not GVW rated.
No.
yeah, so it's a tractor or a backhoe would be allowed.
But you,
Well, but it says equipment, heavy equipment.
Like I have some horse trailers that'll go up to that big, but I don't use them. They're just sitting there.
Yeah,
And I'm out, again, more rural. There's, nobody real near me.
right.
We have several professional truck drivers that they come home from a route and they're home for the weekend.
Right, and that's part of the reason. So in some areas, the council's gonna wanna look at and allow it, and in other areas, it's just not gonna fit. I mean, if they wanna do it in Bright Star, you're not gonna allow it.
Okay.
But if they're out on a 5 or 10 acre piece, like off Perkinsville Road or something, then you would allow that.
Okay,
They have, yeah, but even the roads going up there, we have one incident where we have a commercial trucker who parks on, just right off the Peavine there. And that's clearly a violation, because he can't park at his house, maybe
Hey,
just
Joe?
down the street.
would, using the 13,000 pounds and then also using a parcel size limit, like say if you have 5 acres, then it doesn't apply, or if you have 10 acres, or just a thought.
So maybe acreage under a certain amount this qualifies for, so anything, let's say
Like
everything
if you
over.
say, if you live on
Anything
an
up-
acre, this could apply, but if you lived on 5 acres, it wouldn't.
Yeah.
Or 2 acres.
So maybe anything under 2 acres, it would apply. Anything 2 or greater, it would not apply.
I'm just.
I mean, you guys, how do you guys feel about that?
That makes more sense to me.
Well,
As far
code,
as-
code people, what are you guys hearing out there?
What are you guys thinking?
2 acres and more, yeah, I do agree with that. That is normally where we get the complaints are in the residential
Smaller.
smaller lots, not too many on the acre and over. But then we need to make sure that we look at the outdoor storage of, with the fence and so forth. We need to make sure that we cover it all. So we probably need to redefine this definition of.
Well, I just think the people that have the more property have, the more chance you're gonna have of having something to
Some odd
maintain
thing.
that,
Correct.
Absolutely.
like a tractor or whatever the case may be.
And we get a lot of complaints from citizens of that, complaining about their neighbor having equipment, horse trailer, equipment, trucks. And we basically have told them that there's no code to enforce that, but they'll call. We get quite a few complaints. That's why we thought we'd address it.
I live on a street that has CCNRs, within that street,
Mhm.
just like an HOA. I deliberately live there so that we have regulations that don't allow that.
That's-
But if you move into an area that doesn't have CCNRs or an HOA, well, then you knew that coming in.
Right.
True.
And a lot of these pieces of equipment, a lot of them are stored in barns or storage sheds. Once we do send them a notice, they do put them away. There is some leeway we can rewrite this and figure out. I don't know why the 13,000 pounds, that wasn't mine.
Yeah, and that was actually part of the original code, trying to deal with it. So basically, all we wanted to add was a conditional use permit process. So when we got a complaint, somebody wanted, they can come in and bring it to you guys to decide if you wanted to allow it or not.
And I get that part of it, but I shouldn't have to get a CUP to park my private vehicles on my property. Here again,
Right.
and I don't know
But then when
I don't know if what Jack's bringing up is the right, is a way to go. It may be,
Yeah.
but, obviously, there's no reason for anybody in Bright Star to have a 410 backhoe parked in their driveway.
Right.
Okay.
We totally see that. Yeah.
But I use mine on a regular basis.
Yeah. And Corey's point's valid. I mean, there's certain properties with the CCNRs that limit that already.
Right.
It's just how should staff deal when we get those complaints about the guy with the 2 dump trucks?
If the person that
parked his
calls
money.
repeatedly about complaining about their neighbor, give them a map to show how to get back to where they came from. That's how you handle it.
Probably California.
Okay, you guys got that? That.
Now,
So-
I would think if we could go in the direction of, if that's, whether he be a plumber and has one of these large plumbing trucks that could exceed that weight rating,
Right.
a single unit like that, say a truck driver, I don't have a problem with them bringing their truck home. Now, if they start turning their residence into a commercial parking lot, and if that, residential area, they have the water truck and they have, on and on,
Right.
okay, they need to go to a commercial area to park. You can't turn your residence into a commercial property.
Okay.
But if that equipment is for your personal use, then it's personal.
Okay. So where do we draw the line as staff? That's what we're asking you guys. At what point do you guys, or I guess let me ask the question, do you guys want to even look at these through a conditional use process? Or do we just make the definition so it's either black and white? You either, if you have more than 1 acre or 2 acres, you can, if less, you can't. I mean,
These 2 ladies down here are dying to say something, so. we'll
okay,
let
come
them
on up.
say.
Tina Metters, I'm on the Planning and Zoning Committee. Number one, I have an acre, I have a very large garden, I have a very large Kubota tractor. Would this apply to large RVs?
Ooh, good call.
Yeah.
And I've seen rules like this in other CCNRs, and it states if you have large equipment or anything, it has to be in the back of the property and not in the front yard. And they make a distinguishing factor on that.
Yeah, because saying commercial vehicles or heavy equipment, so your tractor, depending on how big it is,
It's big.
yeah, exceeding the 13,000 pounds. I mean, do we change the weight limit to maybe?
Or just put it in the backyard and not in the front.
To me, your tractor's not being used for commercial use, so,
But it could be considered heavy equipment.
Could be considered heavy equipment.
okay. I would say a lot of it has to do whether it's commercial use or not.
Yeah, you're really gonna have to, I think, go through and dissect this thing. As Corey said, a commercial vehicle. A guy may
Okay.
be a plumber, you know, and he may pull his Ford 550 plumbing truck fully loaded into his driveway at night and park it so he can go to work the next morning. You're gonna say he has to have a conditional use permit to drive his work truck back and forth to his house?
Right.
So, and some of it is just a more common sense approach to it. You know, you can tell that guy is not abusing anything. He brings his truck home at night, he leaves, he goes to work in the morning.
Right.
He's not parking a bunch of vehicles in his yard. I think that maybe it would be realistic to say that an acre or less, maybe you can't have. In
Without
most
a
cases, an acre or less isn't gonna, there's no need to have a water truck, there's no need to have a backhoe,
Right.
you know, on a piece of property like that.
Dump truck
Now,
or
a tractor
loader.
for mowing and tilling and things like that, yes.
Yeah.
So,
So commercial use, defining it that way, will exempt all the personal mowers and tractors that you have. Under an acre would give us a line,
Yeah.
but still leave the conditional use permit in, so if they,
There may be a reason.
there might be a reason why you want to bring somebody who's, maybe it's just a gray area, but doesn't quite meet that definition, but their personal situation, you would normally allow them to have the loader or the dump truck or whatever.
and then I think you need to make that exception for maybe a single commercial vehicle for back and forth to work on a daily basis. If a person's in that profession, they need to be able to park it in their driveway at night.
Okay, so even a full-size semi with a trailer on an acre or greater than an acre.
Greater.
The-
Greater than an acre.
Greater than
At
an
least,
acre.
so that's gonna put you in that 2 acre situation where it's a little more realistic.
Okay,
Unless you have one of those lots, it's 1.01.
So
or
the-
0.98.
So then we're thinking that the plumber needs to live on a acre or larger, or the mechanic.
Or he gets a conditional use permit.
No, he's saying if that's their means of business,
work vehicle.
that bring it
Yeah,
home.
He gets
one-
one single vehicle.
If it's one vehicle, it's his work truck that he drives back and forth, he should be able to park that at his house if he lives in Bright Star.
Okay,
You know, that's what he goes
unless
back.
the CCNRs forbid it.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
okay.
But any more than the single commercial vehicle,
Right.
then we come back through this conditional use
Are
process.
you gonna make an exception in this for RVs? Or not at
They're not
RVs?
commercial.
RVs don't
That
apply.
doesn't fit this.
They aren't commercial or
They'll be a
heavy equipment.
private,
Oh, that's true.
yeah.
That doesn't
Okay,
fit
never
this.
mind.
Yeah, so RVs and boats would be fine.
And
You
I
know-
won't even muddy the water as far as what if the husband and wife are both commercial drivers?
Well, if they're driving the same vehicle, it's okay.
Obviously, if it's over the road, they don't like each other.
This is true.
So
Yeah.
this is exactly the discussion we want to
Yeah.
have. Exactly, thank you.
And we get it on the using common sense, but when they take it to court, the judge wants a
Yeah,
little
the
bit more
judge
black and white, and
Right.
unfortunately,
But the conditional use permit will give them that out.
yeah.
Or give them a process that
Yes,
they
they
can come
can
and
go
get
through.
it approved,
get
because
the
every
acceptance.
situation is gonna be different.
Well, let's revise this and try it and see what you get with it. If it's not working, we can take a look at it again.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see it again before it goes out, right?
yes,
Mhm.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it'll be before your next council meeting.
Yeah, and then like you said, Mayor, if we get 10 conditional use permits over the next year, then we can maybe retool
We look
this,
at it
and
again and
you
see,
don't
well,
wanna
maybe
have
it's not
this.
working right.
Yeah,
And all of it's not gonna work right because we're gonna find out There's
It should be the
exceptions out there to
exception,
everything.
yeah.
Yeah, and understand our compliance folks are bringing this forward because they're getting complaints. And you just want a clear direction of, you know, where's the line and then where's the process for them. And I think just giving everybody in the community the option to come in and go through that process is a good thing. It's a good thing. So, and I believe that was it, Mr. Miller, for my portion of
I
the
mean, was there
presentation.
7 slides?
That was
Good
7
job.
slides. I had a title
Good job.
slide, so you can take that off. Did it
Good
good.
job. No
Okay.
budget cuts for you.
So if you have no additional questions, we'll be bringing the 2 ordinances, one to modify the UDO and to make these code adjustments. We'll make these changes, and I'll try to send out an email of the language we redid here to let you guys look at it before the council meeting, as soon as we have it.
Joe, on some of this other part that's in your presentation in front of the summary of proposed code amendments, are these already existing codes, or have some of these been modified as well?
There are some minor modifications in here, but what I went through today were the major modifications. But the summary we detailed exactly the code modifications we made in this 3-page summary.
One, I would just like to make sure that either this is or isn't changed. Within, I would say, chapter 82, declaration and prohibition of public nuisances.
On page 2, yes.
What page you on, Corey?
I am on page 5.
5 of 66.
I breezed right past.
In that second paragraph, halfway down, the provision regarding litter has now been changed to allow the governing body of the city or town to compel an owner, occupant, or person in control of the property to remove the rubbish. That's fine, except if they don't comply to that, the town does have the ability to lien that property.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, we can go over.
If I have an occupant of a property that I own that's getting cited, are we also sending a notice to the owner?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
because
So-
that same thing is repeated in the following paragraph.
Right. We
And I
originally
think
deal
it was
with
repeated.
the person in control, and that's the person we're making contact with who's living on the property generally. But yes, we do notify the owner.
Okay, because as the owner of the property, I don't want to all of a sudden see a lien notice coming through
At the last,
at
No.
the end of this.
yes. Yeah.
Okay,
In fact, we're doing that with the utilities also. If we disconnect, for example, a sewer for a tenant not paying, well, now the house is inhabitable. So we notify the owner too
okay,
and let them know what's going on. So, yes, sir.
thank you.
So, with that, I'll bring,
Joe,
Joe,
oh, I'm sorry.
I'm not done with you yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, same one, B, chapter 82. And this goes on through. There's several pieces that come to play in abandoned vehicles.
Okay,
In under C, it describes as abandoned or junked vehicles. And then when you go all the way over to page 8 of 66, under 81.2, there are some exceptions: horseless carriages, classic cars, historic vehicles, or street rods. But other than that, vehicles which are without current license plates or tabs, or inoperable, vehicles being repaired when such repairs take 90 days or more.
okay,
Okay, these are all in violation. Are incapable of being propelled under their own power. Those are all in violation, and a person can be cited and forced to remove those vehicles under what this says right here. But then you go over to page 9 of 66 and it under junk, and it says junk does not include, and then you roll over to 5, a motor vehicle which is being repaired, restored, or rebuilt by the owner of the vehicle as at his or her private residence. We've got a conflict there. It doesn't say rebuilt by the owner of the vehicle at his or her private residence if it's done in 90 days.
Right.
So, here again, I realize we're trying to do something that's good here, but I think that we still have to remember that we live in Chino Valley. And I don't know how you're gonna go to someone who has their 1953 Chevy pickup that their grandpa owned, parked next to their garage, and it doesn't have an engine in it.
No tags.
And you tell them, hey, you gotta get rid of that because it's inoperable. Case in point, Mr. Miller here, there was an old pickup truck parked in his deceased father-in-law's yard for what, over 20 years? In the last couple of years, they pulled it in and they restored that truck, and it is a beautiful piece of equipment now.
Okay.
You know, should he have had to get rid of that 5 years ago and not have that opportunity to do that? You know, I don't think so.
Right.
So, here again, that's just something else to look at.
Yeah, and a lot of this is just gonna be a common sense approach to how we do it. I mean, a lot of these will come from complaints, neighbors complaining, but if you take that same vehicle and you keep the weeds around it and you put it by the garage, neatly park it somewhere, so maybe in the backyard, out of sight, out of mind, instead of just letting the weeds and everything grow through it, there's a huge difference between those two. And if your intent's to restore it, that's okay.
And I'd like to comment too, when the mayor and I were doing a lot of our outreach, abandoned vehicles in yards was a pretty big issue for the citizens.
Yeah, it
They-
was.
Yeah.
I
people
mean, you
had
can
just
drive
leave 'em
around
sitting
town,
there.
you can see
Oh.
old pieces of junk sitting in everybody's yard. It looks like hell. So how do we justify
How do we
not
balance?
having that move?
Junk is a definition, what's,
Balance
you know,
it.
trash
I-
to one person into another.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah, beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
But
Like that.
at what point do you allow a junk car to sit in somebody's property, or 3 or 4? I see 3 or 4 of them sometimes sitting in property.
I'm gonna say that if something is partially dismantled and it sits there, now you have a case.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you take, again, historic vehicles, so what is a historic vehicle? What is the definition of that?
It will have an historic license
Yeah,
on
I
it.
think that's.
Well,
No,
not
not if
necessarily.
it's
It may
not
not have a
licensed.
license plate.
Yeah, mine not.
Then it's not a historic vehicle.
I think
Go ahead,
that,
if you want.
It's an old vehicle.
there could be interpretation also of where they're stored. Because a lot of, you know, if we can't see them from the front property and they're behind a fence, we normally don't tag any, you know, bother anybody from, that has a truck that needs to be restored, or an old horse trailer, if we can't see it from the street. Now, we do have properties out there that have 5, 10, 20, 30 junk cars that in their backyard that we can see. So, you know,
So if the owners want to keep them, they can screen them or park them out of sight, out of mind type of thing. But that's again,
I think the screening is a big
It's-
part of.
So
Discretion.
I think to replace a lot of what you've got in here, saying that if you're going to keep vehicles that are inoperable for a period of longer than 90 days or 6 months or whatever it might be, that they need to be screened from the public eye.
okay.
That's fair.
I'm liking that.
That'll work.
Yeah, that'll solve 90% of the problem. Yeah.
Right.
that could
And
be
if the
as
neighbor
simple
still
as
doesn't like
putting
it, well,
something on-
tough.
Yeah.
Go back to plan A.
Yeah. Yeah, because
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, because owners with historic vehicles that are truly going to restore them, I mean, they park them neatly by their garage. They keep the rodents out and the weeds out of them, you know, and there's a big difference between that than one just sitting on the side of their fence that's been there for 3 or 4 years. So.
I have the 53 Chevy I've had sitting for 10 years. This year, my New Year's resolution was get it restored, so I've begun. But it's sat for 10 years.
So you'll have 90 days. What's your address, sir?
Yeah.
Put a cover on it.
Joe, one more, please.
Okay, sir.
Again, page 5 of 66, chapter C. It prohibits parking of commercial vehicles of a certain size on undeveloped and unsurfaced private property, and goes from there. Does that apply residential as well as commercial?
So what's the code section? I don't have the same page numbers as you do.
Chapter 83,
Okay.
And it's
property
C.
maintenance.
Number C.
Stereo bitterings. Help me out, Joanne.
What number are you looking at?
It's in between B and D.
I got that. So is 8301 or?
I just have a straight 83
Oh,
property.
okay, you're right here.
C.
Oh, he's on the front. page.
Property maintenance.
Okay.
Well,
It's like the second to the last sentence in that one. It prohibits parking or commercial vehicles.
vehicles of a certain size on undeveloped, unserviced private property. It sets forth penalties for violations. So your question is whether it's both residential and commercial. So, yeah, and throughout 83, I think that's where it further defines that.
Right.
Let me see if I can find that real quick.
Not to be for commercial.
Yeah, so 8309 is parking of commercial vehicles and equipment, and that's the portion that we went over earlier on it.
So I think that's the summary, Corey, that you're looking
Yeah,
at.
so this is just the summary. So your answer is commercial vehicles.
Oh.
And that's comes back to what I have on the screen, the 8309.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is just the legal summary of the changes.
But the actual code is 83.
So it's at page 17.
So, yes,
Of
17,
66.
8309.
And that goes to what he had up on the screen, or this part right here.
So then I am going up to 8309
Yeah.
yeah.
is what it actually,
Yeah, so it prohibits parking of commercial vehicles of any of a certain size, and the size is 13,000 pounds, on an undeveloped or unserviced private property. And
So that's the one you asked us to make some tweaks to.
yeah, that's the one we're gonna change.
okay, so the undeveloped, do we have definition of undeveloped and then a definition of certain size?
Yeah, a certain size is gonna be exceeding 13,000
That's
pounds.
the 13,000. So this would prevent people from just using a piece of commercial property or residential property to just park a vehicle on
To park a commercial vehicle on,
without it being developed.
yes. Yeah, so just buying a piece of dirt and parking a vehicle on it,
Without a CUP.
right. And now it'll be less than 1 acre. We'll make the changes that we talked about
Mhm.
earlier.
Right.
Does
Okay?
that make sense?
It does to me. I know that one is gonna fill up their plate with some,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm. Some violations.
some violations there as
Yes,
well.
sir.
Okay?
Yes.
Other questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so David and Aaron have a short little presentation on the property maintenance program for you.
How many slides?
84, 85.
Good evening.
Which one's Aaron and which one's David?
Hello.
That's a cold shot, you know.
Well, Aaron could be a boy's name.
For those of you who don't know, my name's David Jaime, Code Compliance Officer. This is
Aaron
Aaron Deskins. All right. So why are we doing this? Well, part of the strategic plan and also for community welfare. And here we kind of showed you how code compliance works. We kind of brought in, another reason why we're doing this. You can see before and after. This particular one here was a fence violation. They had a pool without a proper fence. as far as height, and the gate was accessible by anybody, and you can't really have that. And this goes along with a state statute as well. So here's another one, just before and after, some trash, debris, stuff like that.
Good job.
This is another one with weeds. You know, this is just kind of telling you why we're doing this stuff. You know, this is what it looks like before we get involved. This is what it looks like afterwards. This was a pretty heavy duty one. House had burnt, had been sitting for a long time, and finally got it resolved, got it taken care of.
So is the house completely gone?
Yes.
Wow.
Here's some commercial property with weeds that we just kind of threw in there just to show you kind of what we've been doing. So, all right, so we want to introduce a Chino Valley cleanup campaign. We're kind of going to split it into two categories, commercial and residential. And this is the slogans we came up with. As far as commercial property along 89, we want to focus on these areas. This is kind of what we came up with. Well, it is what we came up with, but it's open to, you know, feedback, whatever you guys have. We're willing to, you know, move that around. Weeds, outdoor storage, outdoor sales, screening, and car sales. And what we mean by car sales is, you know, someone with a business frontage who throws a car out there and puts a for sale sign out there and sells it. A couple of them. We wanna cut back on that. Here's the process we'll be going about doing this. Town will go in there, kind of do an inspection, check out document violations, and rather than, especially with commercial, rather than just, you know, walking into a place of business where, you know, people are trying to get things done and kind of interrupting that, we don't want to do that. So what we'd like to do is just, you know, make contact with the business owner, property owner, and set up a meeting, whether we go to them or they come to us, just something where we can get their undivided attention and not disrupt anything that they're doing throughout the day. So, you know, we can bring them in, we can talk about what we found with their particular property, we can go over, you know, some ways to remedy that and stuff like that, and just kind of let them know what's going on. We're kind of talking about giving them some sort of timeline with that, you know, with the discussion, kind of say, hey, can you do this in this amount of time? If we don't see any progress, then we'll kind of start the more structured compliance process, which we do already. But reason why we're calling it a soft sell is because we want to give them a chance to voluntarily take care of any issues they have. If not, then we can move forward with our process. Now on the residential side, it's similar, but these are the points we're seeing a lot of violations with weeds, trash debris, inoperable vehicles, fencing, exterior maintenance. I'd like to throw another one in there that I see a lot, and that would be people living in RVs, occupying campers, RVs, fifth wheels, stuff like that. These, along with the one I just mentioned, they constitute 90% of my complaints. So that's kind of why we wanted to do that. Now this map right here is a map of the town, and the dark purple 1, 2, 3, that would be the commercial areas, and they're numbered 1, 2, 3, of course. So that's how we're going to start this. You know, the area number 1, then second, then third. As far as the lighter purple, that would be our residential areas, obviously, and this is where we had envisioned starting the process as well. And that's totally, I mean, if council feels that we should start somewhere else or go somewhere else, then that's totally, you know, we can change that around. And here is our residential process. We want to send out like a mass mailing to neighborhoods that we're going to be focusing on 30 days in advance. Then we will go out, conduct inspections, document violations. We came up with an idea of using a carbonless door hanger, which will be something I can, if I see a property, if I can't make contact with the resident or whoever lives there, I can fill out this door, you know, tell them, you know, who I am, what I'm doing, what I see, what violation, check it off. Then I can peel one part off, I can leave the door hanger, and then I can take the rest with me and use it in my case. If we get no response from that, then we're gonna go ahead and start the regular process as well. Now, as far as a marketing plan to go along with this, we're gonna do a lot of community outreach, whether it's through Chamber of Commerce, just going around talking to the businesses, churches, clubs, the Coffee with the Cops program. We've already we haven't really started doing this because we're waiting for approval, but what we have done is we filmed some YouTube videos just kind of introducing who we are and what we do and stuff like that. Nothing solid, nothing, hey, you got to do this, you got to do that. We're just talking about who we are. We went on the radio already, talked about same thing through Talk of the Town. We did some, this is, I'm David, this is Aaron, this is, what we do for the town, something real mellow. If the program is approved and we move forward on it, we can also use those platforms as well to discuss, more in depth of what we want done. Then I mentioned the mailing part of it. We can do direct mailings, or we can also put stuff in utility bills for the people within our utility districts. And that's pretty much it.
Last Saturday, I drove down 89, and off to the right, there was somebody set up a couple of tables, and they were doing a garage sale.
Right.
I'm sure they're only going to be there for several hours.
Right.
How are you going to deal with those folks?
Well, that's a tough one. They move around a lot, and they know we work 4-day weeks. They come in on Fridays and Saturdays, so we had thought about just kind of moving our schedules around, not a permanent thing, but just kind of hit them out randomly. I've actually been in situations where I've seen, a truck coming in, parking with firewood on it. Luckily I was right there, I saw it, so I was able to go confront the person and let them know what was going on, and with a pretty good result. But, we get, believe it or not, when something like that happens, we get phone calls, big time. So that, the citizens around here, they see it too. So stuff like that, we'll just be out there trying to, do what we can.
You don't see much during the week, but on the weekend they come
And
they come in and...
when Aaron came aboard, we
of
actually...
course, they don't have a license, they're just there.
Right. When Aaron came aboard, she spent first, several weeks doing a Friday and a Saturday shift and going around, and she did talk to some people. We noticed that they figured out that we were kind of out there, and it did kind of slow a little. I'm not going to say it stopped completely, but it did slow a little. So once we actually roll this out, we're gonna be more vigilant about that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, I think it would help if somebody do a run around on the weekend. Just drive down
Right,
and
right.
see the folks in there. You don't see a lot of that in Prescott or Prescott Valley, but you
Right.
see a lot of it out here. I think they all come from Prescott Valley out here.
I agree with that.
Yes, sir.
Let's go back to the first thing you talked about.
Okay.
I think it was mainly commercial property
Right.
and the sale of vehicles.
Right.
So I have my commercial property. If I have one of my service trucks that I retire from the fleet and I want to sell it, and I take it out in front of my shop and put a for sale sign in it,
Right.
is that okay or is it not?
That
okay?
currently is against code. There is, and I believe it's through a conditional use or something where commercial light can apply for a permit to do that. Because even like a used car lot, when they come into an area where they're zoned, they still have to get an approval. Is that correct?
Right, and these ones that are on the street and in Safeway, and they're not zoned for car sales.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to stop. So yes, you would probably be in violation because you're not zoned for car sales. And that's what happens quite a bit. If you look at all the Safeway and a lot of these businesses, they put out 2 or 3
No,
cars.
I understand that part, but I'm talking about, everybody, I go down past Chino Heating and Cooling. They get a new truck, they're selling their old one, so they put a for sale sign in it and they sell it. I've done the same thing. So, I'm not talking about having a half a dozen cars. I understand exactly what you're saying as far as 10 cars parked in the Safeway parking lot with for sale signs in them, using it, as someplace to put their car out there.
There's a good point what you're bringing up.
Yeah.
If you have your business truck and you are trying to sell it, that might be a whole different category than having a paint shop bring in an old Volkswagen that he's selling just to get rid of his personal vehicle.
There's a difference if you're being a car lot and a private owner
Right.
having a vehicle for sale.
Right,
So,
that's something.
by the same token, if you see if you see that I have 2 trucks for sale this week and I sell them, and then next week I have 2 more trucks for sale, well, obviously,
There's
I'm sidelining a car
Right.
lot. So, there again, just a thought about, I mean,
There's something to take a look at, yes.
yeah.
But that one vehicle you're selling is gonna be on your property. You're not gonna put it out Safeway, right?
No, but my
No,
my
but it
property's
says-
commercial.
I know it is, but it's still
that-
But
your
it
property.
says,
But
it's,
they just said you can't.
the way it's worded, it would be in violation.
Yeah, okay,
So you
yeah.
can't. So it's gonna argue.
We could probably tweak the language on if it's a personal sale that you're doing, yeah.
Right.
Private owner, I should say, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think that I've heard of in the past that the way some communities have done that is you're allowed to sell 3 vehicles a year.
Yeah.
You know, I was
Or
just
something
thinking
like
that,
that,
as you were saying,
And
you
if
know,
you
as
go
we were
over
talking
that,
about that.
then you're a used car
And you know,
salesman.
we're here, we're a small place, we kinda can see when people are doing, you know,
Right.
more than they
Multiple.
should be. So it's gonna take a little,
Yeah.
you know, discretion, but.
David, in the beginning, you were asking about some guidance on a time period that you allow people, off of that voluntary.
Right, we're kinda still vetting that out a little bit.
I'm thinking like a 45-day myself.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah,
It's
I would
very
agree.
reasonable.
Coming under the kinder, gentler society, you let them know, you give them a reasonable amount of time,
Right.
and then you begin the process.
I think he was looking for what is reasonable amount of time.
Well, I think what's reasonable depends on what it is. If somebody's got weeds, then I think 45 days is too long.
Right.
Because you're gonna have twice as many weeds by then.
Exactly.
Okay, if it's somebody that is supposed to have, screened fencing for outdoor storage, then I think 45 days is realistic. That's a monetary investment, it takes time to do, so you're probably gonna have to have a sliding scale on some of those things
Right.
also.
You know, and that's where we come in as far as common sense, or as far as, you know, situations. If it's an immediate danger, you know, that's gotta be taken care of.
Yep.
So,
Well, you're gonna have plenty of work, 'cause I know there's one car repair place down on 89 that pulls cars out and lets them sit, and it looks
Oh, yeah.
like.
Yep.
So good luck on that one.
thank you.
The other item that you threw in at the bottom of your list
Yes.
was the living in RVs.
Yes.
I would like to see you leave that at the bottom of the list,
Okay.
and I'm not condoning anything. If they're starting to put patios and decks and all that, that's one thing.
The reason I brought it up is because I feel many complaints about that, and I see it everywhere I go. You know, and it's a big thing here.
You know, we might do a definition of like when you're building your house, you're able to live in your RV. Maybe when, somebody comes in for visiting you, you know, they pull in with their rig and they're staying there for a temporary amount of time. But the ones that are there constantly over a couple, 3 months, they're living in their
And we
RV.
have neighborhoods that are a 16th of an acre. You
And
know,
they
a
got-
small little tiny lot, and they're cramming in.
I live in an HOA, and if you bring your motorhome in, you've got 3 days to park it. But if somebody comes to visit you and is gonna stay a week, you can get permission from the
Yeah, right.
HOA to park it there, and you got a sign you put on it.
But
Right.
you're
I think-
speaking more of as like secondary residence.
Exactly.
Right, and I
Or
think-
someone with a little bit of room, and they're renting out, you know, that spot. You know, that's
And part of it's just being a good neighbor, because I think it's some of the neighbors who are complaining, it's like an overuse of the lot.
right.
There could be some sanitary issues
Uh-huh.
there.
And we do have that. You know, we have people that open up their drain and they just let everything go on the ground. So it's
And, you know, we also have people living in parking lots at Safeway, the parks, you know, we have
Mhm.
every year. Mower, yeah. We have one right now that we're working on. But I think there should be some leeway, especially when you're building your home. I think you should be able to live in your RV. but then with some restraints, you know.
I believe that there is an actual provision within the code for construction.
I thought it's already there.
Well, we couldn't find it. We've been searching and looking, and it doesn't say anything as far as, it does say for, medical reasons.
Medical reasons,
And
yes,
it
sir.
also says that if you have your sewer connection, your water connection, your electrical connection, if you have a mailbox, you
Mhm.
can live in your
Or
RV.
any of the three of the five
Mhm.
items, then you are,
Right.
yes. I will look up that construction one.
Please, because we've, have a, it might be in the town code, but not the UDO at this point that we're moving it over.
Okay.
Any other comments?
So is this
I just
kinda-
think that, I think the idea of having that deal there too, where someone, you have a visitor come in,
Right.
you know, from out of state, they're stopping in to visit for a week or something like
Right.
that, and then, you know, anything over that is a different story.
I'd agree. Yeah.
Okay.
So is this kinda hitting what you guys were looking for?
Yes.
Okay. They are already scheduled to be at the chamber luncheon next month in February to talk about this and, let the commercial owners know. So,
Good. Good. Thank you for,
Well, I'm just
Where you
happy
work?
for you, Jaime, that you got yourself a tough-looking character
Right
like
on.
that to go out there and help
you
with
got some
this.
protection now, Bubba.
That's it. Thank you.
Strong, silent one.
That's right, silent but deadly, right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
thanks, you guys.
Okay, the next item. Presentation discussion regarding a water management system. Mr. Bruner.
I don't think they've been introduced, Jason. Scott, I don't think they've been introduced.
We haven't. Well, why don't you introduce yourself to Mayor and Council? Evening, Mayor and Council.
I was going to. Good evening,
Okay.
Mayor and Council. My name's Jason Olson. I'm the Park Supervisor.
He's the new guy on the block,
New guy on the block.
so you can't miss him though.
Yeah, but he's been here longer than any of the rest of you,
Yeah.
except
Well,
Jack and Corey, maybe.
Jack doesn't remember me, but we go way back. I think he actually coached me in Little League too.
Yeah?
Or minor league, yeah. I'm Robin
Yeah.
Olson's son.
Oh,
The oldest one. Smartest one.
I remember that.
Best looking one.
You used to be, I was gonna say, you used to be cute.
I know. Now I gotta keep my face warm.
So Little League isn't the only thing Jack taught you, obviously.
No, that's for sure.
Humility, yes.
Right. So, point of my conversation here is first I want to educate on what I'm going to talk about and then kind of inform why I believe that this is necessary. And then at the very end, through contingency funds, ask for some funding to hopefully get this in place sooner rather than later. Water management central control system. They all run off of something called evapotranspiration. Simply put, it's also called ET or ETO. It's a total amount of water that's lost through evaporation in the soil and transpiration, which is breathing of the plant or grass. In a desert state like we are, droughts, it's extremely important. Benefits of a system like this: water management, save money. Sorry, I need to change that. What do I do to change this? Just scroll down. Okay, got it. Save money, and then the ability to operate from one central controlled system, which would either be in a tablet, a computer up in one of our offices. We could also remote in through our cell phone. Right now, what we currently do is each little place that we have irrigation, we have a stupid little control box, which is the same one that you guys probably have at your house. And we got to dial it, scroll through it, look at times, look at all this stuff, and it's kind of a pain in the neck. So what this would do is give us all access to one area to where we can take care of all of this. So precision ETO weather stations, they measure 5 climate conditions, and it's real-time weather. So the one that I'm going to talk about, gets into weather underground. It reads what the actual weather is. It reads solar energy, wind, humidity, temperature, and rain. And then what it does is it throws into this fancy formula. And so based off of this formula, I made it confusing because it is confusing. The computer does it for you, and it tells you how long you should be watering your grass. What do we do now? We guesstimate. Sometimes a cycle runs for 45 minutes to an hour. In reality, that cycle probably only needs to run for about 15 minutes. Nobody does that formula. Nobody looks at it. We don't have a central control system that tells us what we should be watering. So we blow water and we blow money. So, kind of what we just learned about a system, what it is. The easiest thing to take care of it is something called technology. It's changed our world. We can do just about everything better, faster, and with more efficiency than ever before. Baseline, which is what I'm going to be talking about in a little bit, is an industry leading in commercial irrigation control systems that leverage the latest technology. This allows landscape managers to take care of more sites with fewer resources, maintain healthier landscapes with less water, and spend less money on the equipment that takes it all to happen. So, little background real quick. So basically I got Horizon Irrigation. There's a gentleman that I've worked with before, and I brought out their little guru that does these little things. He came out, he looked at the pump station over at the community center and said, I put this in, I helped with this. So he was very familiar with what we have and what we did, but didn't realize that it never went further than what he had done with it. So what it does is, and I'm just going to touch on a couple of these things. The controller is at the pinnacle of the intelligent irrigation systems, and I'll explain that in a little bit why. We're able to connect either through radio, Ethernet, Wi-Fi, or cellular, and when it's operated in conjunction with Base Manage Plus and Weather Access, it will meet the EPA's WaterSense program water efficiency and performance criteria. So, whoops. The benefits of the base station 3200. Main thing I want to talk about is it utilizes what's called a master valve. For anyone that's familiar with irrigation, a normal valve stays shut. Once it turns on, it sets an electrical force, takes a magnet, lets the plunger go up, water comes on. What a master valve is it's opposite. It's always in the opposite position, so it's always opened. When it detects a leak, you have all these different things you can put in there. When it detects a leak in your main line, that thing shuts down. So 3 months ago-ish or so, we had a break at the community center on Thursday night. We didn't find out about it till Friday because the water had run all the way down to Perkinsville and was going down the ditch towards Chino Meadows. How many thousands of gallons did we lose? I don't know. But with this program or something like this,
How many thousands of dollars did we lose?
right, that master valve would detect that there was a high flow and it would shut it down. If something breaks in just a normal station, it realizes that it's on that station, it'll just shut that station down, and then it'll continue the water cycle. So if the rotor blows up out of the ground or there's a physical break, once it reads whatever the parameters are that are set, it'll shut that station down and move to the next one. And the biggest thing, we can save up to 62% of water and money by switching to something that's controlled like this rather than guesstimating like we do now. So this baseline, base station 3200, I'm just going to touch on a couple of these. So the reason this one was recommended for us was all the other ones right now use 3G internet service. This is the only one right now that has a 4G modem. So rather than putting in an old system and then spending more money down the line to upgrade, we can get the 4G right away. The other thing I want to talk about on here is not only does this run irrigation, but if we had the right setup, we can run lighting zones, water features, bathroom door locks, and branded signage all off this program. The other thing that I like about it is the asset mapping, inventory, and accounting. So basically, we'll have our map on the computer system. Not only can we put our irrigation stuff in there, we can put where our park benches are, where our trash cans are, anything like that, and we can run. So if I do a presentation like this, I can print that little bit out. Instead of guessing where things are, it can be right there, and we can show where everything is. You can get your square footages for fertilizing, throwing herbicides, pesticides, insecticides. You can do all this stuff right there on the map rather than going to a Google Earth and then trying to find it, so on and so forth. The other thing I want to touch on real quick, and we would be able to do this, is we'd have a 10-year warranty as long as it was certified. And the guy that I'm talking to for the labor should be able to certify it. So that's worth it in itself. As I mentioned before, it runs off the cloud, runs off Weather Underground. Really not a whole bunch here. Unless you guys have questions, we can come back to that part later. So what does it cost? Which is the big question. To do the community center and memory parks, somewhere around $32,000. And that's what it includes on there. The hydrometers, those are the master valves. 48 station controllers, the modems, Ethernet switches, all the wires, getting locked stainless steel cabinets so it can't be destroyed by somebody else, that's in the area. I know people here aren't good at math. I'm not. But if we actually saved 62% of a $150,000 water bill, that's $93,000. If we only saved half of that, that's $46,000.
And
So
that's
it's already
just-
paid itself, and that's in 1 year.
And that's just a community center, right?
That
Water
community center
centers.
and memory park.
It's, okay,
Yes.
okay.
So I've got quotes if we end up going to Old Home Manor. The other reason that this is recommended is things that I want to do. So you can put in soil moisture probes into the ground, and so it can read the underground moisture control and also help you based on how you want to water. You can also, what I want to do is rather than going, say, I know there's a weather station on 1 North in Molly Ray. Most of us from Chino know that Molly Ray might get pounded with a monsoon, but Memory Park doesn't get anything. So I also want to try to put weather stations in at the community center at Memory Park. And so that way we have it on site for our weather, and it's a little more accurate than maybe going up the road or so on and so forth. Honestly, I guessed on the installation it might be $12,000. I haven't got the quote yet, but I like even numbers, so I figured $40,000 would be a good way to put it for now. It will go out to bid. I think Horizon is on the Mojave contract or the state contract. I know they deal with NIPA, and I think they deal with Sourcewell too. So it will be something that goes out to quote and figure out who's got the best price and why. As I mentioned before, we're kind of looking for contingency funds to go. That way it's put in now. We're hoping to get it in before we turn water on in the spring. Other processes, which I got your email just before I came here on the acronym. I've never heard of that before. But if we look, and you can get grants. The problem is they take so long and you might not get that grant money. So that's why I'm standing here in front of you. Other reoccurring fees. So it'd be $190. The first year would be free with the baseline, and then $199 per year per controller, a separate computer, a tablet, whatever we decide to do to make this thing run and get up could be extra. So there was 2 programs that were recommended. This one and another one. The other one was cheaper to install. It was also 3G, so it would be more in the long run because we'd have to go back to it. But also their reoccurring fees are, I think, like $400 or $500 a controller per year. So they make their money in the year rather than getting the parts and pieces to put that together. And finally, questions?
On that controller unit for $1.99, is that each sprinkler head?
No. No, so we have a block system. So we have a valve that runs anywhere from, well, at the community center, anywhere from 1 head to 46 heads.
And each one's $199 a year?
No. The controller is just the system that runs that whole place. So the community center would have 2. There'd be one for the left side, one for the right side, because that's how it's set up. And then right now there's 2 at Memory Park, but I'm not planning on putting in 2. I'm trying to get either just 1 to run the main area, or we'll just put 1 in the main area, and the new area that just got built, just run that off the old one because it's pretty much just drip anyway.
I asked the same question.
Yep. And then we'll put in, I've got water saving heads that I want to put into those little grass areas rather than what's in there now.
Yes, sir.
The controller unit, will you be trained, or will some of your people be trained to do the minor programming and that, or will we have to depend on the people that sell it to us?
They just install it. We'd be ready to go.
Okay,
So just quick background, I used a similar system in Peoria and a similar system in Prescott.
okay.
The system I used in Peoria is the Ferrari of these things. It's probably 3 or 4 times this, and the one in Prescott is worthless. They might as well just throw it away. They're just blowing money out the. It's worthless.
The valves that are in there, are those a solenoid valve or a motorized ball valve?
They're all cylinder. Well, there are ball valves in there that are manually, but they're all
The
solenoids.
automatics
Yes.
are solenoid?
Yep, they're all solenoids.
So in the $199 per year per controller, which I think it probably will need to be exercised more than that, will you be able to exercise those valves once a month or whatever to make sure they're gonna work when they're called upon?
Yes,
Okay,
but it'll give you a warning for everything. So if something is not working, say there's something electrical, whatever their words are going to be, it'll come up in the morning. You come to the computer, there'll be a big red sign that says station 15, blah 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 blah, too high electrical current.
no, what I was talking about was having that leak on
Oh,
Thursday
yeah.
afternoon.
Yeah.
And the controller says that valve needs to close and it doesn't because it's hung open. So, because it hasn't been exercised, it's been sitting stagnant for too long.
No, it's the master valve. That master valve is made to stay open. Like I said, it stays open, so all it does is shut. Once it reads that, it will go.
Okay.
And I've never had one fail.
Okay.
So I mean, don't know how much more I could answer that other
Yeah.
than.
No, it's just, I deal with it all the time.
Right.
And, like my customers, I say, go around, have your maintenance guy go around, shut the valve, open the valve.
Right.
So that you know it's gonna work when you need to use it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't get
So.
ignored for 5 years,
Yeah.
type of thing.
Yeah.
Since this runs by cell phone or the other things that you talked about, how secure is it to keep somebody from crashing your system?
I would
getting
say
in
it's
there?
pretty secure.
Okay.
I don't have the exact answer. I've never had one get hacked in.
Haven't any problem with
No.
anything like that?
No.
Okay.
And the idea is to have it on a computer. I don't know if all of us will have it on our cell phones. I will definitely have it on my cell phone. And it's only for the fact of, oops, we forgot to do something. Hey, Little League starts and all the sprinklers are on.
Yeah.
So instead of driving all the way down to the community center and taking care of it, pop on my phone, okay, we're turned off.
Right.
So, but I would assume because it's run off 4G and it's run off all that stuff, it's got to be pretty secure.
Well, I've been involved with similar systems like this on irrigation projects and things like that, and I think it sounds like a really good idea.
Any questions on this side?
I don't.
Any comments? It's a non-budgeted
Mr. Finance
item.
guy, where's the money from?
Contingency. It's not
I
budgeted.
almost got away with it.
Almost.
Well, I will tell
He
you,
would've caught us.
when Jason brought it to us and talked to us about it, one of the things he said, the city of Prescott's water budget for their parks is $150,000. Guess what ours is? Or about 160, about right there.
160, I think is what it said.
You know what ours is? 150. And it's because for every year since I've been here, I've been raising it about 10 or 15,000 because every year I've stood in front of you and told you we've had leaks here and leaks there, and we keep blowing our budget. So I'm just trying to keep ahead of it. So I really believe this will pay for itself in the first year. I really do. And even if it's 2 years, it's still a great investment. So we have our contingency funds. We've only tapped into it basically for the shooting range so far this year. We'll have to allocate whatever that number is. And so Jason will get the quotes, make sure we go through our procurement process, bring them back. We'll put it on the council agenda and ask you guys if you want to approve it at that time. And so we'll just use contingency funds this year.
So yes, we have the money.
We do have money, and that's really what the contingency budget is for things that we really had no idea. We hired a really great guy here who has some really good ideas, so we need to let's support him and help the parks out.
Do it and bring it back.
Well, and the other thing is, how many investments do you make that pay for themselves in a year?
Yeah.
So it's pretty much a no-brainer.
Well, our water budget's just way too high.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, in Prescott, I think I watered 16 fields,
Yeah.
plus all the parks and everything
So
else.
you're gonna rub it in
So
now.
$20,000 more. And we went over, but that was for other reasons.
Sounds like a winner to me.
Yeah, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay. Presentation and discussion regarding salary survey findings and recommendation for the town of Chino Valley for fiscal year 2019-2020.
Hi there.
Laura Kay.
4 slides, Laura. 4.
What's that?
4.
4 slides? 9.
Take the
where are
ones
we
you
at?
want.
Pick out the first one.
Laura, ignore him.
I don't know where it's at.
Oh, dang, it's not there.
Take your time.
I didn't put it in the Z drive.
Oh.
Shoot.
So,
It's on the agenda though, Jen.
it is on the agenda.
The PowerPoint is in the
Mhm.
agenda packet, so if you can pull up the packet.
Oh, you want the packet?
Yes, please. So while that's coming up, I can kind of start. So the town of Chino Valley entered into an agreement with public sector personnel consultants back in August of 2018. So the primary purpose of the agreement with public sector personnel consultants, or PSPC, was to ensure our salaries are still competitive since the original comp in class, which was done back in 2012. They also provided other services and recommendations, but that was the primary purpose of the survey. They began the survey last quarter in 2018. And the results of the comp and class study showed that the town, we've actually done a really good job of staying competitive in the market. There were a few key findings and recommendations that they made, and after reviewing those findings with the town manager, the changes needed to keep our compensation competitive and minimize internal salary compression amongst employees only amounted to $32,000 in total to stay competitive. And what that equates to is 0.9% or less than 1% of our current base salary. You have been in your packet provided with a complete salary survey and findings from PSPC, but I've tried to summarize it in a PowerPoint presentation, so it doesn't go into specific detail, but it kind of gives you an overview of the results.
I can't, it's gonna be in the Y drive, I'm just checking through here, but I don't think we have it here. Just the agenda.
We can go to the website.
Oh, well, maybe we do have the
Laura, is this the same company that did the original?
Yes, we use the same exact
They
company.
did a good job.
I apologize for this.
That's okay, you
I can go to the website.
Okay, we don't have Y drive from here.
It's just, Oops.
Yeah, because you don't matter.
That's it. And
I
that's
think
good.
I can find it here. All right. All right. Here we go. Okay. I don't know if I can rotate it.
Yes. Arrow there,
Which one?
where you were, right there.
Reload current page. That's not a rotate.
Okay.
Hmm.
We'll read it sideways.
Okay, I apologize for
Yeah,
this.
the one in the Y drive is, this one should be returned.
So, is this gonna be okay? I apologize for
We
this.
have it in front of us as well.
Okay, thank you.
If it's
Um,
not okay, then what?
I will put it on the Z drive and make sure it appears properly.
You're good. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So the scope of work that we agreed to with PSPC included a number of items, but I just kind of wanted to give you an overview of some of the things that they did. So the project overview included that they conduct a market survey and analysis of competitiveness with the external market, that they conduct a review of our current salary administration practices, that they conduct a salary structure review and recommendations, that they conduct an analysis of our internal alignment of staff, that they provide a fiscal impact of the proposed salary plan, and that they provide an implementation plan. So the first step was to actually conduct a market survey and analysis of the external market. So the market competitors were identified with whom the town competes with to obtain and retain qualified employees. That was our first step, find our competitors. And competitors have varying positions as an employer. And the jobs were what were compared, not the employers. Private sector data was also included in this survey, where public sector data was incomplete, or it wasn't available, or we needed supplemental information for comparison. So the market comparators were the same comparators that we used in 2012. So those same exact public sector organizations. PSPC also used Economic Research Institute for private sector survey data. And again, it was used when public sector comparators weren't available or we needed supplemental information to make comparisons. From the comparators, PC selected benchmark positions to compare. Benchmark positions are those jobs that are commonly utilized for competing employers. So with those benchmark positions, job content was compared, which includes similar duties, responsibilities, and complexity of a job. So the survey resulted in the following information. 21 of our positions, or 33% of our positions, in comparison to benchmark jobs, were 5% or more below salary midpoint of the external market. So basically, we lagged the market in 21 positions. 34 of our positions, or 54% of our positions, in comparison to job benchmark positions, were comparable to the salary midpoint of the external market, so we matched the market in those positions. 8 of our positions, or 13% of our positions, in comparison to benchmark jobs, were 5% or more above the salary midpoint, so we led in those positions. And in some of those situations, we needed to lead the market to get qualified staff because they're in high demand or the supply isn't there. So from the salary survey results, the next steps would be to assign each job position a grade or a range, and putting them into that proper grade or a range. And most of our positions were already in the right range. So of the 69 benchmark positions that we evaluated, 21 of them needed to be adjusted into new ranges. 48 were already in the proper range, and of the 21 assessed needing range adjustment, we looked at the relative worth of those jobs compared to similar jobs at the town to put them in the proper range. Okay, so implementation steps. The next steps would be, these would be our initial implementation steps. We need to adjust employee salaries so no one is paid below the new set minimum ranges, and the cost to implement external market adjustments amounts to approximately $19,000. So basically what that equates to is 0.53% of our existing base salary. So not a lot of money to make that adjustment. The next thing we would need to do is adjust existing employee salary placement in their ranges to better reflect the length of service that they've been with the town, and also to adjust for compression for different employees within the town. And that would amount to approximately $13,000, which equates to 0.3% of our current base salary. So again, not a lot of money. And all of these changes are recommended to go into effect with the new fiscal year. So just as a summary, I want to kind of give you a summary of what I've explained so far. So 71 positions were assessed. 21 employees were recommended for grade or pay range changes. 13 employees have recommended pay and or grade increases. 58 employees do not have any recommendations for any changes because they're in the right place with the right pay. The total cost to adjust employee pay to match or in some situations lead the market, a few situations, and to adjust for internal disparities equates to $32,000. And that represents 0.9% of our current base payroll. Of the $32,000, approximately $19,000 would be used to fix internal compression and account for length of service at the town. And the rest would be to adjust for disparity in the external market where we don't match midpoint of the market. So 21 of our positions lagged the market. 34 positions met or were at the target market, the midpoint, and 8 positions led the market. So not all the job classes that we reviewed have an incumbent in that position, but we wanted to review those positions still. So if we utilize those positions in the future for strategic staffing or making changes or creating career ladders, we would have those readily available. So the other thing that I didn't mention that we also did was we requested that PSPC recommend a new salary plan. And the proposed new salary plan will no longer have 12 steps like it currently does, where those steps have a 2.5% difference between those steps. What we're recommending is an open pay salary plan, utilizing the same grades, where step 1 of our existing plan is the minimum point. And then we have a maximum point where step 12 becomes that maximum point, and then you have a midpoint. So all the steps would be eliminated, and you would have a minimum, maximum, and a midpoint. The midpoint reflects 100% of the market, meaning that is where we match the external market. The minimum pay would be 13.5% less than midpoint, where you would be at 86.5% from midpoint. The maximum would be at 113.5% from midpoint. So you would have a range. And this would give managers more freedom to assess an employee based upon their performance, because we use pay for performance right now, to place them in the right place instead of being constricted or restricted to steps, which most of our employees right now are off step anyways. The only time we use steps currently is when we hire somebody, when we promote somebody, but thereafter they're on pay for performance, so it becomes a range where we place them in their grade based upon their performance. So that's one of the things that we're also recommending be changed. Finally, PSPC also provided us with salary plan maintenance recommendations, and they included periodically updating the salary survey data, identify the level of market competitiveness of each benchmark job on a periodic basis, and which we've been doing, and actually that's the reason why we don't have such a drastic, we're not lagging so much. It's not so drastic because we've done that year after year. So I believe the town's done a really good job of staying competitive in the market. They've also recommended that we assign jobs below market to a proper market competitive salary range on a regular basis, adjust internal alignment of non-benchmark jobs when needed, adjust employee salaries that fall below the minimum range, and adjust salary compression if necessary. So that's basically the overview of the survey. So the final steps would be how we roll it out. So the first step would be initially the town manager and the human resources department, myself, we got together and did an assessment of the recommendations and kind of tweaked them based upon our needs. The next step would be for the town manager, the finance director, and HR to again do a final review of the recommendations, and we agree upon recommendations as a whole for the town. We would roll out those changes to the department heads, and then we would roll out those changes to the staff. Anybody that doesn't have a change would get one letter. Anybody receiving a change would get a different letter, and then we would roll out all those changes at the start of the new fiscal year.
Questions? Questions on this side?
Yes. And I think I might be finding my answer here. On the initial implementation steps, we need $19,000 to cost to implement market adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have cost in range adjustments, the third item, of $13,000. So your report says we need actually a total of almost $32,000.
Yes, and that
So-
accounts for both
So
of those
that tells me
items.
the difference between 19 plus 13, 20, 32. So we don't really have an adjustment to reflect length of service in town.
We do. I believe it's the $13,000
Is
would
what?
be part of that. The $13,000 would be,
Okay, so that's not a separate item.
no,
The cost in range adjustment is the length of service adjustment.
yes.
Okay, it appears that they were two different
Oh, okay.
items. I'm looking at close to the 32,000 here. So.
So the 19,000 would be to adjust to the external market and placing individuals in their proper grade if they were not in the right grade. And then the $13,000 would be for account for length of service and compression issues within the town. That would be the 13,000.
Okay, so there's you're going to a 3-slot system, either your entry level, mid, or high range?
With percentages.
Instead of 12 increments, you're either in one of 3 then?
No, you are in a grade, and the grade has a range of 27%. And based upon your experience, your years of service, you're at a percentage of that grade, 100% being the midpoint. You're at 1. You're at midpoint of that grade. And 13.5 below 100%, you're either a new hire, you're still learning your position, you're not as skilled as, you're just not as skilled. So there's a range right there. So based upon say you have your evaluation and you get a performance rating, which gives you an eligibility for 2% merit increase, and you are at 86.5% of midpoint, you'd get your 2% increase, which would take you to 88.5% from midpoint. So you don't have 3 slots, you have a range of 27% where you can be placed based upon your pay for performance in this open pay range in your grade.
Does your length of service ever exceed the maximum within that range?
It can, and that's why we have created career ladders in some positions. And if it does exceed, we actually have some employees that have been here for a number of years. We're very fortunate to have those employees, but they may exceed their pay range. So at that point in time, we need to make a decision. Do we let them exceed their pay range, or do we reevaluate the position and put them in a new range? It probably doesn't make sense to put them in a new range because the market doesn't state that we should or should create something new for them. So do we just let it ride? Or do we create a new level of position, like a level 1, level 2, level 3, and we require them to get additional training or experience or give them new duties and responsibilities? So we have options at that point in time.
Okay.
You know, several years ago when we went to the system that they had created for us, and it was on that step system with 2.5%, it was just within a year or two that we realized that was almost too rich for us. We couldn't afford, if you were exceptional and if you were average and you just got an increase at 2.5%, that meant if you were exceptional, we couldn't afford 5%. And so that first year when we had a pool of money that we were finally able to give for some increases, that was when we said we have to have a kind of a modified system. We couldn't afford to do it at the way the original salary plan was established. So.
I guess what I bring to this is a private industry. You know, I can only afford to pay an employee no matter how long he's worked for me, how long, you know, that I have a cap before, you know, I'm not making money. You know,
right. There's actual, and like Laura mentioned, we do have some positions that the person has been here in the same position for a long time, and they have just maxed out on their salary, and they pretty much, except for getting maybe a COLA adjustment, have sat there.
And that is an option. They are capped out. All they're
Okay.
eligible for is cost of living adjustments and no more.
and that's more where I would, being in the real world.
Right, unless
Kinda wanna
something
hold it.
changes where they take on new responsibilities or they go for a different position, that has happened.
Well,
yes.
then they're changing jobs at that
Correct,
point, and
yeah.
they're providing a service that they weren't,
Mhm.
you know, prior to that. But I to exceed really what that job is worth.
Right, and some of
Yeah.
it's their own choice to just stay in that position because they're comfortable, and I don't think that we necessarily should say that, yeah, you're gonna still continue to get merit increases above and beyond what the market is paying if you're choosing not to change your skills or your position or, you know, add more value, I guess.
We're close.
Well, what was just as important to me was that when you start talking about your 13% either way, is that, like Corey, I've been in business a long time, and I realize that not every employee is created equal, even if they're doing the same job. So I was glad to hear that their supervisor has that latitude to take a look and say, well, just because the cost comparison report says this, you know, this guy comes in late for work or, you know, whatever, he really doesn't deserve the raise that maybe a couple of the other guys do. And he can make that determination and make it more fair across the board for the people that he's got working for him.
I agree. Somebody who's exceptional gets 2.5% increase, and then somebody who's just getting by gets a 2.5% increase. There's no motivation to want to perform, and that pay for performance allows us to reward those who go above and beyond, and those who meet, great. Well, thank you for your service, but this is your merit increase.
I'm happy to see you go to pay for performance because that pinpoints people that are exceptional and
Yeah.
and
Not
awards
longevity.
them. And those that are not don't get the award.
And I appreciate the direction that you gave us to go to pay for performance, so thank you.
Jack.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second. All in favor? We're adjourned.
Thanks, and I'm sorry.
Laura.
Did the rain go away?